You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hi, this is Lady C. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Critical Thought. And I have a guest with me today. Her name is Linda. And she found us over about a year ago and had an interesting story to tell about her life in the Watchtower and how she woke up. So, Linda, welcome to the program.
It's so lovely to be here.
So Linda, how long were you in the organization?
All my life. I'm 70 now.
Okay.
And I left I started fading in 2016 and probably made the absolute cut it was either 2017 or 2018. That was my last memorial. In fact, my sister, and my brother-in-law were all going to go that year. I showed up at the Kingdom Hall, and they didn't. So I was a little irritated with them, thinking, doggone it, but that was the last. That was the end for me.
What woke you up?
I think I had been awakening for many, many years, but I had been programmed to believe that whatever was troubling me or bothering me, I would wait on Jehovah, and he would take care of it. And as time passed, you just realized that wasn't going to happen. It never did happen. My son left after something pretty major happened in his life. And he felt very betrayed by the rest of the family because we didn't stand behind him. And even today, I could sit and cry over it because I should have taken a stand and said, this isn't right, and I'm not waiting on Jehovah anymore. But I didn't. And like he said, he went to his grandfather and said, this is what happened. And Grandpa said, just wait on Jehovah. He'll take care of it. And my son was like, nope, never again. I'm done. And he left. My daughter left pretty early, in her early teens. I just kept hanging in there because I still had a mom and a dad that were active, and a sister and a brother. And it was part of my life, going to the Kingdom Hall. That was my social foundation. I didn't have any other. But all through my life, there were little things that troubled me. But it was the 2016 convention that was the nail in the coffin for me. And that was, my brother had sent me tickets to come to Wisconsin so that I could attend the convention in Green Bay, Wisconsin, with he and his family. And the video that was presented on disfellowshipping took everything I had not to bolt out of the stadium. You have this mother refusing to answer a phone call from her disfellowshipped daughter, and another mother refusing to take a email text from her son. And as I said later, no one has the right to tell me I can't associate or socialize or be there for my children, ever. How anyone could have thought, what if that young girl was in trouble? What if she needed her parents and the mother won't even pick up the phone? And that for me was the end. And the troubling feelings that I've always had over disfellowshipping and how those restrictions have gotten stronger and stronger over the years. As a young girl, I remember people being disfellowshipped from the congregation. Very, very few, maybe 3 as I grew up. And the entire congregation cried. That doesn't happen anymore. When they were reinstated, they were enfolded in arms and there was celebration. That doesn't happen anymore. I assisted a sister who was disfellowshipped by her entire family. She was blindsided by it. She had a drinking problem. She needed help. The family disfellowshipped her and left her hanging with no place to go, nowhere to live. I helped her, and I was marked for that. It was 10 years before she was reinstated. It's just, for me, the most heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. And I remember growing up as a child, the Catholic Church being condemned for their attitudes about excommunication. And yet here we are doing even worse. And now the more I find out, the more I learn. And as I had to tell my dad, I'm done, which devastated him. He's 91. He's in bad shape. I have a hard time visiting because he's going to just lecture me and hand me scriptures. I've tried to speak to him about the problem, but at this point in his life, he can't go there. He became a witness when he was 11 years old. He went to prison when he was 18. He raised us kids to believe in a God of love and mercy and a world that was going to be peaceful, that every human being would be a brother or sister. I delighted in the conventions, especially when people from all over the world were there, and I know how hard this is for him to accept that anything could be wrong with an organization that he gave so much of his life to. He dedicated his life to being a witness, and he raised us kids to be the same. And at this point, at his age, and I know a lot of it he can't grasp any longer, cognitively, he's not there anymore. And my sister and I have decided we're not going to be public in our removal until he has passed, because I know what it would do to him if there were any announcement from the platform of our disfellowshipment or whatever they might say. I know it's just, it would be a cruelty to him.
Well, what did he go to prison for? Was it for the neutrality issue? I think we talked about that before.
Yeah, all my uncles were sentenced to 5 years. My dad did not come of age until the end of the war, and he was sentenced to 2 years and served 18 months. And of course, as soon as he was released, he and my mother got married. He tried to get work. He tried to get to join programs like through the Ford Motor Company for training, but he was considered a felon, so he wasn't allowed to. He couldn't get anything. Plus, he had quit school when he was in the 8th grade because Armageddon was coming. Plus, he lost his father when he was 5 years old. So he and his 3 brothers worked to support the family, and he was encouraged to quit school to help out. When my brother and sister and I were all in school, and witnesses were not encouraged to get an education. In fact, they were encouraged to quit school, pioneer, whatever. My dad would not allow it because he knew the struggle you would have not having a diploma. So there were a lot of different things growing up that he was very different from any of the other witnesses. I wasn't denied being able to play with neighborhood kids. We didn't have the strictness of many other witness families that I have listened to or read about or heard who are very bitter about how they grew up. I fortunately didn't have that. However, I grew up with such a deep, abiding belief that the new order was coming any day, that we would not grow old and die. I buried my mom, and a year and a half ago I buried my brother, which was very painful.
Sorry for your loss. Condolences to you and your family. Yeah.
Thank you. I never expected to get old or to suffer any of the health issues that I am now facing. And I'm having a really hard time with it. I really am. I spoke to someone years ago who said Jehovah's Witnesses, especially the children who are grown-up witnesses, have been given a disservice because the rest of the world believes in their mortality. They're going to die. We were taught we wouldn't. So now I deal with pain every day. I deal with issues that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around. I'm having a hard time dealing with that thought. Yes, I am going to die. That should have been something that I was prepared for. And you don't think about it until you face that. And it's very, very difficult. And now, for the first time in my life, because I've always had such a peaceful feeling internally, a feeling of security. I haven't worried about the things that a lot of people would say, well, don't you think about that? Aren't you afraid of that? Aren't you afraid to die? And it's like, no, I don't think about it. Because as far as I'm concerned, oh, what's going to happen? And now I realize, yes, it is. And now the things that always bothered me, the injustices that have gone on in this world for centuries, that I have always questioned why, I question them even deeper now. Thinking, how could a God of love and mercy allow these things to go on for 6,000 years of human existence? How? When you or I would not tolerate a day of it. So now I have a deep and abiding belief that there was a creator, someone who made this beautiful world that I love. In fact, I was laying on my couch last night in the dark, watching the trees blow in the wind and listening to it and just thinking, whoever did this, thank you, because I love every bit of it. I love everything about this world. But I cannot believe at this moment in a creator like I used to. I want to know why this has all happened, because none of it makes sense anymore. The Bible accounts, and I'm putting that in quotes, air quotes, are, as far as I'm concerned today, stories. Because none of it makes sense to me. It didn't really then, but you've got a father that's passionate about this is how it happened and this is what it is, and he's teaching you to pray and he's teaching you about this God of love. And you're thinking, well, okay, that has to be true. But now the more I look at it and research it and think about it, I can't accept it. I can't accept what was once upon a time called an account, and now I have to call it a myth or a story, because it just doesn't make sense to me.
Do you think that your father, yeah, it is painful. Do you think that your father at his age is really saying, I've put so much into this that certainly the end has to be coming around the corner now? Do you think he's really at that point?
Absolutely. I honestly don't see how he will survive another year. His health is so bad. I went to visit him just 3 days ago, and I could cry looking at him, because this is not the dad that raised me, that I grew up with. And at this point, we have had some arguments whenever he's come over to try to convince me that I've got to go back to the Kingdom Hall, and I've tried to point out to him, I will not accept these criminal policies involving child molesters. I do not accept the criminal attitude towards people disfellowshipped. I do not accept the fact that billions of people will die and be stacked on the earth like cordwood, burned and split open like hot dogs on a grill, which is what Toni Morris had to say. And I said to my dad, how can you accept how could you accept that? That wasn't how I grew up. When I would question my dad about who died Armageddon, and he was like, oh, Jehovah will read hearts. And we were not taught that only Jehovah's Witnesses were going to survive. Because I said to him, 7.25 billion people on this earth and only 8 million are going to survive. Please, this is not acceptable. I don't believe it. And he looks at me so quizzically, so almost confused. At this point, I can't have conversations with him like I used to.
But you know what? When you look at what he went through now, being baptized at 11, going to prison at 18, dropping out of school so he could, do more with Watchtower stuff, and, just going through his life. And then all of a sudden, just years, like decades are passing, no end.
Yeah.
Multiple changes are being made in the organization, still no end. Now he's older and he's still holding on. This is what we think that people are doing now. There's a lot of people like your father that it's almost like instead of them trying to just take back the little bit of life that they have left, they want to continue putting water in a pail that has a hole in it. And this is what you're dealing with people. And it's a fear factor because they're afraid that maybe what if this is the truth? That's their issue too. Because I have an aunt like that.
What would he do if at this age he were to say, I made a mistake, or this is not the organization that I first dedicated my life to being a part of? I don't think he could mentally, he can't handle that. I know he can't emotionally because he gave up everything. And we're told you won't be facing old age and have to worry about, well, I have a very small Social Security that's from my husband because I didn't work. I was a housewife and a mom. And all the things we were told that Jehovah would provide, we believed he's not. And now the society is telling people to go out there and take advantage of government assistance. Well, we were told that was going to be Jehovah's job. And I'm thinking I was different the way I raised my kids. I put them in sports. That marked me. When my son did finally leave, his children have not only been in sports, but they've excelled at them, and they've both gone to college. My grandson graduated as a mechanical engineer. My granddaughter graduates this year as a biology major because she wants to be hired by NOAA, which is to try to save the earth as far as she's concerned. I'm so proud of them, but my dad won't even ask about them because of that. They're the most wonderful, grounded, beautiful human beings you'd ever want to meet. But he doesn't ask about what they're doing, where they're at, how they're doing, or any of his other grandchildren, except the ones that are still serving Jehovah.
Or serving the Watchtower.
Serving what? Exactly. No, exactly. That's what it is.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing that, you're saying this because your father, he knows what he lost out on. But yet he can't, it's like a cognitive dissonance. He can't bring his mind to admit or to look at what happened to him and be happy for his grandchildren to see that didn't happen to them.
Right. But he's under the impression that they won't live in the new world. And I'm just like, Dad, that's just such foolishness. We're talking about good people here. They just went to college. And I know too many of the young witness people all through my life and years that lived lives that were not or would not have been considered good, healthy witness lives. I know that for a fact. But as long as they got their 10 hours in, if they made every meeting, they had to be okay.
It's amazing that you were having this conversation because the Jehovah's Witnesses that will come to our YouTube channel and put comments on when we're talking about college, they will say, that's not true. Jehovah's Witnesses don't look down on people who do go to college. And here we have your experience. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. In fact, it was interesting. A few years ago, my brother made the comment that the society had now given their blessing for sisters to go to college and become nurses. But do you know why? Because they had just opened an oncology department at Bethel because some of the brothers had cancer and needed to be given chemotherapy. So this young sister had just gotten her nursing degree and was going to get accepted at Bethel. And I just found that appalling. that, oh, all of a sudden it's okay for a sister to go get a nursing degree because she can be used at Bethel.
Oh, that's so crazy. Yes. Well, the same thing with the attorneys. You know, they were calling for brothers who were attorneys and they had, you know, professional careers that they could come to Bethel to volunteer their services so they could use them, and they don't pay you. They don't get paid.
That's right. And then you find out how many district overseers and brothers have been released from Bethel, sent home with nothing, no credentials, nothing to fall back on, hoping that family or friends will take them in and help them. My aunt and uncle went to Gilead in 1959, I think. We went to their graduation. He left his job. They sold their home. They went into the circuit work. I even went with them a couple years in a row and loved it. But when they got old and they had to leave, my aunt said, we gave up everything. We dedicated our lives to this organization, and we've just been cut loose. If they had not had children willing to take them in and take care of them, they'd have had nothing. They wouldn't have had anything to fall back on or to support themselves on. And she had said, I wish they would set up a home for the elderly ones who have been in the circuit work, dedicated themselves all their lives, and taken care of them. But of course, that's not something this organization does. It doesn't take care of its own. And that's a fact that a lot of witnesses now don't want to think about or hear about or believe.
Was it their age, or did somebody get sick when they had to come out of the work?
They were getting up in years, and they were having health issues. And eventually those health issues got worse and worse until they finally had to say, we're going to have to leave the circuit work. And that's what, yeah.
Because I heard now the society, the Watchtower, actually retires them at 70, I think it is. When they turn 70, they automatically take them off the road.
Oh.
So it's not like you can keep going like years ago. And then, of course, they got rid of the district overseers. But the circuit overseers, once they reach a certain age, I don't have the exact age, but I think the magic number is 70. But once you reach that age, you can no longer be in the work, and they would know, hey, look, your time is about up. So your aunt and uncle was in the organization. They were a circuit overseer. He was a circuit overseer under the old arrangement.
Yes, because I don't think the society at that time retired them. I think you finally made up that. I think I could be wrong on that. But I do know their health became so bad they finally had to withdraw and go and live with a daughter. And both their son and daughter helped maintain them for the rest of their, until they finally died.
And most people who go into the circuit work don't have kids, so they were fortunate that they had their kids before they went in.
Yes. In fact, for me, that was probably one of the saddest times of my life. They lived behind us when I was growing up, way out in the country. Their kids, my cousins, I adored. I was over there a lot. My grandmother, she would have been my great-grandmother, she died there in their home. So it was very family. Our whole congregation was small and family-oriented, and I felt like that's where I belonged. It was my safe haven because school was a miserable place to be. I experienced a lot of bullying, getting beat up pretty regularly. So coming home to my home, going to the congregation, that was a safe place. It was a happy place. When my aunt and uncle decided to sell and go to Gilead, it broke our hearts. It broke my heart. I know it broke my mom's heart because she had no other family. and I miss them terribly. And I feel that this organization breaks up families. I've experienced this myself. And all for this future promise of something that, as far as I'm concerned, has never been realized. When my brother-in-law died at 20 years old, he'd been married 1 year. He had a 3-month-old baby daughter. He died of leukemia. He died in our home, my husband's and my home. And his wife, Rachel, promised that she would never marry again because he was going to be resurrected very shortly. She kept a diary. She kept pictures so that he could see his baby daughter grow up. Well, that's been over 40 years ago. She was positive that within a year or two, she'd have him back. And to me, that's such a cruel thing to do.
But it's really sad. You know, it's really sad because Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe that and you know this yourself, they believe that when a person dies and they're resurrected, you wouldn't be able to marry them anyway in the new system.
Well, she was convinced that they'd be back together again, raising their little girl together. So, but like I said, that was 40 years ago. And I think it was maybe 6, 7, 8 years later that she finally realized she needed somebody. She needed to not be alone anymore, and she remarried. And I don't know what happened to her after that, but it was that was a painful experience, especially when you understand how many people are counting on that promise.
A lot.
Yeah, and looking forward to it. Yes, I'm in a place where I feel very resentful of the fact that we had so much potential. We had the ability to do so much, and we were told, no, now's not the time. We've got to put all of our time and our energy and our life into sacrificing for something somewhere else. We weren't allowed an education. We weren't allowed to create, explore, expand. We were kept in this narrow little box of just what the society gave us to read, the 5 meetings a week. And I have said to my sister, if there is a Jehovah that put us on this earth with all this capacity to learn and to invent and to create, and we said, we'll wait till the new world to do that. Really? We're going to believe we've wasted what he gave us. We wasted our lives. We wasted our time and energy. And I feel very resentful of that because I know the things I dreamed of and looked forward to and wished for. And you'll get that in the new world. That'll happen in the new world. And now you think, I'm 70 years old. How much more time do I have left on this earth? I'm not capable of doing a lot of things anymore because I'm restricted by rheumatoid arthritis that has damaged my shoulders to the point where I need them replaced, but I don't have the insurance to be able to do that. I have breathing issues and an autoimmune disorder. It's just, and you think, okay, so what's left to me now? I know I have to change my mindset and my attitude because I'm sure there are things I can do. I just have to come out of this place of hurt and anger and resentment and go forward. I know that's what I need to do.
Have you talked to a therapist at all?
That's interesting because my sister set me up with someone. She does neurofeedback. And we had gotten started. My sister was going to pay for me for my first 3 sessions with her. And then happened the virus, the quarantining and sheltering in place. But what I have been amazed at is that this therapist calls me every Wednesday at 11, no charge. And we talk about a lot of these things that crop up and I know are deep inside of me. I was married for 30 years to a man who was diagnosed as bipolar with schizoid tendencies. My son at 10 tried to talk me into leaving him, and I didn't do it. It was 4 years ago that we discovered, quite by accident, he's remarried at this point. They did a brain scan on him and discovered that 20% of his brain is scar tissue from a traumatic brain injury he suffered at 7. So it at least tells us why we dealt with what we dealt with. As my kids used to say, you never knew who was coming home, Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde. But you hang in there thinking it's going to get better, or all you have to do is love them enough, or it's not true. You can't fix somebody that doesn't think they're broken. You can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. You can only do what you need to do to survive. And too many of us as witnesses, especially witness women, put up with all kinds of abuse and all kinds of things we never should have. And if, like me, they've gone to the elders begging for help and they were just told to be better wives.
I've heard that many times from people I've interviewed in the past, yeah.
Yeah. And after a while, you lose yourself. You lose who you were or who you could be. You're just going through the motions. And then you live later with the regret that you didn't listen to that inner voice that said, you need to leave this. You need to move on. But I did what I did because I thought it was the right thing. At this point, all I can say is that my kids ended up successful. My daughter went through some very, very troubled years because of what she experienced growing up. And it's only been in the last 2 years, her job in Seattle came to an end and they sent her to Boston to interview for a work. She got that job and she met the love of her life there. And I'm beside myself with joy. I can't believe that she has found somebody like this. I can only be so grateful and know that I don't have those deep feelings that I have to be here for her because she had somebody. So they're planning on marrying this coming October, but I know she's a little worried that maybe with all that's happening, that may not happen. But anyway, and both of my kids keep a constant check on me. My son calls me as he's coming home from work just about every night. My daughter keeps close contact. In fact, my daughter surprised me with a car. She buys me a car and I'm saying, what? No, you can't do this. And she's going, yes, I can. And you're not to question it. And you're not to, tell me I can't. And some of her comments are, I know how much you gave up for me when I was growing up. And now it's my turn. So I've been very blessed with the kids I have and the grandchildren I have. I couldn't be more pleased. Yeah.
That's good. Now, did either of your children ever get baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
My son did. It was his whole life. He was so dedicated to what he considered God. Now, that's one of the things he has said of late. I did not dedicate my life and baptize myself to an organization. I was dedicating myself to God. But it became a dedication to an organization that he did not agree with. He used to carry the mics in the congregation, but when the elders found out that he was running track, they took that privilege away from him, which broke his heart. So there were just things over the years, plus a young man in the congregation who was disfellowshipped at, I think, 19 or 20, ended up getting pneumonia and dying alone in the hospital. My son can't forgive that. So there's just been one thing after another over the years that had occurred that he couldn't accept. And he knew too many elders over the years and the things they had done and that had been covered up. But he finally just said, I will love and commit myself to Jehovah in my heart for the rest of my life, but I will not live under these rules and regulations by men who he felt had broken with Jehovah. So he left. We lived way out in the country. Our congregation was this tiny, tiny little kingdom hall with one bathroom. I felt like that was my safe place, my haven. I got beat up at school, and it took me years to understand why. We were just coming out of the war years. I'm the one child in the whole school at that time that doesn't say the Pledge of Allegiance, and the one child that doesn't stand up for the national anthem. I thought about this years later. The kids are going home from school every day, sitting around the dinner table, talking about this girl that doesn't salute the flag. Their dad served in the military. What do you think was being said at that table? And kids normally will act on what parents are saying. They will act on the emotion that they are getting from the parents. The parent's upset. The parent's angry. I put my life on the line. They're probably one of those Jehovah Witnesses, you know? So the next day, I would get surrounded by a group of kids. They called it a gang pile. You'd get surrounded by kids. Somebody would step into the ring, knock you to the ground. Others would jump on you and pound on you for a while. I never could figure it out because I just figured what was wrong with me. But I know being a witness at that time, so close to the end of the Second World War, there had to have been a lot of emotion involved in that. So going to the Kingdom Hall was a place of safety because I felt loved there. I felt that every one of those brothers and sisters were my family, and that if I needed help, they'd be there. As the years went by and our little congregation began to grow to the point where they built a new hall, people were moving in from Detroit and bringing a whole different attitude, a whole different. We had grown up so isolated, so protected. And now we had girls coming in with bouffant hairdos and language that we'd never heard before. And we were shocked. And little by little, that close, tight-knit family feeling began to dissipate. We weren't all on the same page financially, monetarily. You know, now we had different levels of wealth and just a whole different way of looking at things. We would never have thought of disobeying our parents. These new kids coming in did. You know, it was just different. And we lost that whole thing. And as the years have gone by, it's changed more and more and more. And it hurts me to think of how many different people grew up with violence and such rigid structure in their lives. My dad did not refuse to allow me to read anything but the literature from the society, where I know many people, that's all they were allowed. I read everything I could get my hands on. I mean, I couldn't go in the bathroom without reading the comic can. I had to be reading something. His only requirement was I had to have my Watchtower Awakes read, cover to cover, and then I could read anything else I wanted. And that's how it was. And I am grateful to him for that. I had friends that were not witnesses that I was allowed to call friends. And yet there were people in the congregation that I knew who would not let their kids play with anybody that wasn't a witness who, and I know, in fact, my sister worked at Safeway. She was a cake decorator. Somebody said, I've never been so hurt as and she named this person, was a Jehovah's Witness that told my children they couldn't play with them because they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. And that, to me, was a terrible thing. And my sister and I used to say, how are you going to encourage someone to want to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses or to study with us or to listen to us if that's how we're going to treat them? She had an experience in this congregation we're in now. There are two little girls that live at the end of their street whose mother was mentally ill. These girls would head off to school in the mornings with no breakfast, sometimes with no coats in the cold weather. And my sister started having my niece have them come in and she'd feed them in the mornings. She even ended up giving them warm clothes if they weren't dressed well enough. Well, my niece's best girlfriend, a witness girl, they had been best friends since they were tiny. Her mother told her she couldn't play with my niece anymore because my sister and her brother or her husband were not raising her right. So when they went over to try to talk to them and say, we don't understand why Lucy can't play with Evie anymore, or come over, or Evie can't come over to your place anymore, she said to her, Becky said she literally started to shake when she said, you let neighbor kids come into your house. And my sister said, excuse me? They're not witnesses. They're worldly, and you let them come in your house. And Becky said, yes, and I always will. That's not changing. So the relationship between these two little girls had to be stopped because my sister let worldly kids in her house.
Some witnesses are like that. Some witnesses are definitely like that. They don't won't let their kids hang around anybody. I was like you. My mom let me hang around other kids. Yeah. Thank God.
And yes, thank God that we had reasonable parents.
Well, I think what helped me in that respect was when I had friends that were not Jehovah's Witnesses and how I could compare the fact that they're not supposed to be serving Jehovah, but they were always nicer than the witness kids.
Yes. My best girlfriend was a Catholic girl. There was never a time that she entertained boyfriend, sex, smoking, drinking, drugs, but that was what was going on in the Kingdom Hall. Same with my sister. She experienced the same thing. So I'm grateful that my parents allowed me to choose a friend that I thought fit who I was. I wasn't a wild child. I wasn't out there breaking the rules, and I didn't want to. And I found somebody who felt the same way. She just wasn't a witness. So I was always suspicioned as not being a truly strong witness, even though I went in service, I pioneered, I commented at the meetings, but still I was always suspicioned as being on the fringes. In fact, I was told that years later, you're nothing but a fringe dweller.
Oh my God. Oh, that is so crazy. But you know something? Now you said you stopped going to the meetings about 4 years ago. How do you feel emotionally, mentally? How did that help your mental sanity?
My sister says it feels like a weight has been lifted off of her shoulders. I'm not totally. I don't miss going to the Kingdom Hall anymore. It was too. I was angry too much when I was there. I knew too much about what was going on behind the scenes. I was distressed about the piety that was shown, that was put on spirituality that wasn't true, a shallowness to people. I never felt like I never ever really felt like I fit in. So not going is not a big loss to me. I'm more troubled by the fact that I still have a dad that I can no longer have conversations with like I used to, that he's hurt because of my withdrawal from the congregation. And he's scared because he's sure that I won't end up living into the new world. And it may have been a cruel thing to have said to him, but I said, Dad, the talk that I heard Toni Morris give about the billions of carcasses and corpses that will litter this earth, that they will look like hot dogs on a grill, burned and split open. I said, I cannot accept such, I can't tolerate something like that from someone who's supposed to be a governing body member.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.